tallest point on Earth. For a sighted person, climbing Mount Everest is one of the greatest physical challenges on the face of the Earth. Ever since I went blind, it's been a dream in the back of my mind to climb the world's tallest peak.
Preparing for this climb, there was a lot of people telling us, you're crazy, it can't happen.
We had one guy that actually went ahead and had his camera ready. He was following us because he wanted to take a picture of us bringing Eric's dead body off the mountain.
There are always going to be people who think you're crazy, and then there are also going to be those who do share your vision.
The truth of the matter is Everest was a very, very difficult climb. It was dangerous. We had the Khumbu Icefall to go through, which there's been more people killed in the Khumbu Icefall than any part of the mountain. We had altitude, which is a deadly killer. We had avalanche danger. Anybody, even an experienced climber, could die of cerebral or pulmonary edema on Mount Everest.
I knew that only 10% of the people who try Everest make it to the top. And for every 6 people who summit, I've heard 1 dies.
First time I met Eric was at a trade show in Salt Lake City.
He asked me, he said, have you ever thought of climbing Everest?
He said he never climbed Everest, but he wanted to. We climbed kind of around the back of the mountain, onto the ridge.
God, that feels steep.
And all the way to the top.
As a blind person, I knew I could never get to the summit of Everest alone. And what would get me to the top wasn't necessarily technology. What would get me to the summit were the people that I surrounded myself with.
A leader is someone, in my opinion, that has vision, that takes action on it, but underlying all of that is their character.
Most teams are torn apart by egos. There were some people I wanted to bring on the expedition that I decided not to bring on the expedition because I knew they could not be good team members.
PV wanted people who knew the Himalayas well, who knew Everest well.
But equally important, I feel, was getting a series of climbers that Eric has climbed with in the past that may or may not be great Himalayan people, but Eric trusted.
If you can unify people with one vision, it becomes that rallying point, and it becomes a team that's unstoppable.
Getting close to the time of climbing Everest was really a difficult time for me because I had been struggling with recovering from pulmonary edema and pneumonia. I was looking for excuses really to get out of it. So I put it in front of the team. Not one guy on the team said, no, we don't want you back. So I asked him, Eric, what do you think? And he said something I'll never forget, and that is that being blind my whole life, people have made judgments about me, what I can and what I can't do. I'm not about to do that same thing to you. And I thought, oh man, I wish he would just say, no, you're not strong enough. But had he done that, he would have been a hypocrite. And I realized at that moment that he's a guy I want to support his dream, and I said, I don't know if I'm strong enough to get to the top, Eric, but I know I'm strong enough to help you get there.
He just towers above everything else. Like the biggest plumes I've ever seen in my life. There.
Coming off of Mount Everest?
The balcony in the south
right
summit.
there.
Yeah, probably.
It's a long ways off, though. It's 25 miles.
Just kidding.
We knew that unless Eric could climb through the Khumbu Icefall effectively, quickly, and safely, that he stood no chance of climbing Mount Everest.
My first trip through the icefall was the hardest day of my life in the mountains. Every step could kill me.
Well, 13 hours through the icefall is terrible. He was thoroughly exhausted, as tired as I've ever seen a climber in his life. He collapsed inside the tent when I walked out, and the rest of the team was outside. I told him, this can't happen. Unless we can change this, unless we can get Eric through this thing faster, we might as well turn around and go home. Unbeknownst to me, Eric was listening to me. He wasn't asleep. And he told me later on, he says it was one of the most down periods of time in his life.
After that, I forced myself to sit in front of my tent and envision myself and my team on the top, to actually bleed myself forward.
I've been guiding Eric for 12 years, 13 years now, and so we've gone through a whole list of different systems that, you know, work, some don't. The systems that we use are related to what terrain we're traveling on.
I needed to figure out a way to find a pattern through that ice fall, to find some systems that work for me.
Giving him more time and practice, he got better.
A lot of my improved success had to do with my teammates. They began to understand how to tap certain things and give me information and how to communicate real succinctly.
Unclip that ATC. Nope, not that way, Bubba. There you go.
Before you knew it, we were speeding through there. We were passing people, which was cool. Sighted people, other teams.
On Summit Day, he actually made it from base camp, past Camp 1, all the way to Camp 2 in less than 5 hours, which even for a sighted climber is an incredible feat. We set up a nightly tent meeting because it was a very effective way to get a lot of communication across.
It'll be a heavy pack. So, hey, guys, you can't bring your toothbrushes, you can't bring all that fancy stuff. There's no room for it, there's no way for it. I'm bringing my toothbrush. Crazy. Can I borrow your toothbrush?
The tent meetings seemed incredibly important. The ability to have an open forum to communicate, to talk about things, it gets you thinking.
So if I do have to turn back, I'm just curious. I mean, what's the plan? I'll feel totally bad because I'll ruin probably someone or one or two person summit day.
This whole thing's about you.
This whole thing's about you, man.
Hopefully everybody realizes that we've got a prerogative here, and that's to get Eric to the top.
Well, if Eric can't make it to the top, I'm definitely going to go no matter what.
I started working with Eric as his guide and leading him, but really it was his vision that was kind of leading the both of us.
In having a team like this, it's definitely made up of individuals that have certain strengths.
Really the cohesive element for this team was definitely that we all had a common goal.
The strength of the team as a whole compensated for a lot of personal weaknesses on people's parts. And so the fact that we had so many people together and they were all with common purpose, and they all worked together and they got along well, I think it really made for an incredible expedition.
Above Camp 3, you enter what's called the death zone. It's where your body has stopped acclimatizing. You're not really able to assimilate nutrition. You're like a ticking clock. I mean, you're starting to die up here. You got to get to the summit now as quickly as you can.
When I got up to Camp 4, our tent was destroyed. There was no camp set up. There was nothing there. So we realized that we were going to have to stay there for sure that night and maybe sacrifice our summit bid.
I'm nervous.
What are you nervous about?
No reason. No reason. It's not like we're going to be climbing to the top of the world.
Our plan is to leave Camp 4 around 8:30 p.m. and climb all through the night. If things work out, we hope to make summit by late morning.
It's dark. For the first time, we're kind of on Eric's turf.
Leaving on Summit Day, we got up, we're ready to go, everybody's feeling good, and I felt cold. The higher I got, the sicker I got, and it dawned on me that I had malaria.
TV is coming down. He's feeling really bad. He's moving very slowly. He's around the bulge. He's not too far out, I don't think. But he might need some help.
The goal of the expedition was not to have me summit. It was absolutely the most difficult decision I've ever made in my life. I had spent 2 years of my life working on this expedition, planning on this expedition, dreaming about standing with Eric at the summit.
I think him putting so much of himself into this expedition is probably what cost him the summit in the end, but that's, you know, he's a great leader, and any leader knows when to step back.
It was at the balcony halfway to the summit when this storm came in really fast from the south.
We're still waiting for the weather, but weather is very bad.
All my planning, the one thing I forgot was to appoint an assistant team leader.
We were leaderless. Some of us wanted to go forward, some of us wanted to turn back. We're in a crisis.
We definitely had a low point. You can't help but get bummed out because you feel like everything you've been working for might not come to pass.
It's really amazing that when you really need it, leadership seems to spring from the most unexpected places. Because Kevin, our base camp manager, you know, his job was to set up tents and organize gear and to do less glamorous things like clean the bathroom tents. He had taken it upon himself to understand these very complex weather patterns and charts and graphs that he was seeing over the internet.
Mike, I know you guys are in a storm right now. It's snowing, it's very windy, but from down here it is clearing up. There's stars all around us, even commie reports from Camp 2 that it's clearing up. Just push forward, you guys are going to do great. You'll have good weather within the hour, over.
It certainly helps to hear them say, hey, it's getting better, hang in there.
We're up on the balcony, snowing sideways right now, but I see a star, it looks like it's clearing.
As we're moving up about 28,000 feet, Brad yells down, you know, the ropes are buried.
And the only way to get them out is to dig it out and then you pull it. It sounds like an easy thing, but when it's crusted over and you're only breathing a third as much oxygen, you know, it's a pretty tough job. Those guys probably really didn't need those fixed lines. They probably could have walked right past them and kept going, but they knew the rest of us needed them. And they knew Eric needed them.
I remember processing that, sitting at that one spot and thinking very clearly, if I do this, I'm not going to be able to go to the top. I remember that last tug of the rope, pulling it, and poof, I saw it shoot up to the south summit, and I remember just being flooded with joy.
I was so deflated because I knew that he had just sacrificed his own attempt for me.
He's like, you know, I got to go, though, right? I said, I want you to. That's why I did this.
But I didn't want it to be for nothing, you know, so I gave him a hug.
I watched him hop off the back of the south summit, and I thought to myself, there is no way I'm going to let that blind guy go stand on top of the world and have to hear about it the rest of my life. So I hopped right down behind him.
There's a 12,000-foot drop on this side, a 9,000-foot drop on the other side. At that point, I don't think it really matters which side you fall off of. Sometimes you have to rise to the occasion right now. You got to be good and execute right now, every step of the way.
We're on the top. I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
Good job. You did it, man. We're on top of the world. We are on top of the world.
When I heard he made it, and then I heard like everybody made it on the team, I was thinking, man, I could never have hoped for better success than that.
We did something that's extraordinary, and we all did it. And that's even cooler than if I went over and just did it on my own.
Everyone on our team felt that they had the power to get us to the summit or to lose it for us. They had that power, and everyone, whether they actually physically stood on the summit or not, they, in 1,000 ways, stepped up, and their strengths enabled us to stand on top.
By picking a good team, by picking members we knew would work, by expecting certain things out of people, and by planning in advance, the success of the expedition was decided way in advance in Nepal.
I don't think I'm very different from anyone else. I think everyone has a yearning for greatness inside them. That ability to reach out into uncertainty, in a sense, I guess, to climb blind.